Senator Moran, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Lasca Hirlik. I'd like to welcome Minister McHugh to the House and welcome the opportunity to have the debate on the government position on the current political situation in Northern Ireland. As Minister McHugh, I know, is very familiar with affairs in the North, having previously been chair of the Good Friday Agreement Committee, of which I am a member, and I must say a very vocal and a very strong member of that committee. So I am delighted to see you here. I think it's great, as I said, that we have the opportunity to have this discussion here tonight. But as developments, I think, particularly in recent weeks, developments are unfolding by the hour. I think every news bulletin that we listen to, recent allegations and new and fresh information is coming forward that I think maybe I hope we didn't preempt the situation by having the debate today, and I would ask that as events unfold over the coming weeks, that it perhaps might be something that we can return to in the very near future. In the past month alone, there have been discussions, breakdowns in communication, arrests, releases without charge. We've the First Minister standing aside, ministers resigning their posts, and we also see a situation where, other than Arlene Foster, there are currently no unionist ministers serving on the executive at all. I welcome the fact, as Minister Flanagan has said prior to your joining us here, in the Seanad Minister, the work that has been ongoing by the Taoiseach, Minister Sherlock, and himself in encouraging these roundtable talks. And I do think it is very welcome that the 5 main parties did resume the talks on Monday. But I think this is a situation where we need to move forward. We need to get everybody talking. Nobody wants to go back to the situation, certainly, that we had. I mean, Senator Cummins spoke here about Derville MacDonald's article in the Sunday Independent. I too remember journeys across and up across the border, living in the border town of Dundalk myself, and the ordeal that it was to go across the border, as anybody who lives in a border town will know. And I know, as a child, being absolutely terrified of British soldiers and guns, and sometimes the fortresses that we had to go through to get in. And I know one horrific day of seeing an attempted shooting of a British soldier one day in Newry as a child was something that remained with me, and I can only imagine the horror that people actually living in the circumstances, as she has said, every day, and the effect that it has had. Indeed, I welcome the fact that tomorrow, in the Good Friday Committee, we are actually meeting with families and people who, and dealing with the legacy issues and issues that have affected many of these families. And I think, it's something that we all need to be very, very aware of. As I said, nobody wants to go back to the way that was. We have moved on. The North-South cooperation, when we have it, it would be just great, I think, if we had the narrow water bridge in the middle of it to cement that, both physically and politically, to have that bridge in force, or to have an idea of moving the idea of that bridge. And I think it's something that a lot of us, both North and South, and something that we've discussed at great details, both on the Good Friday Committee and also on the North-South Interparliamentary Association. We've had very robust discussions on that matter. And it is awful that we have things like that could be so good, but are just marred by planning decisions, costing decisions, or whatever. And I think, this is something that we could do an awful lot more to move it across. So I too welcome the announcement by the Secretary of State that there will be enhanced support and resources for tackling criminality in Northern Ireland. Fuel smuggling, as we know, is epidemic across the border areas, and indeed, as my colleague and fellow member of the British-Irish Parliamentary Association, Senator Coughlin here, conducted a very in-depth study on cross-border fuel smuggling, and I'm sure he will speak about that when he addresses the Seanad this evening. And the inordinate cost to dispose of diesel sludge. And indeed, my own council, as I said, Louth County Council, has borne the brunt of diesel sludge that has been left behind by these criminals. But we need to tackle it, and we need to address these questions, and I think we all need to be honest. And as Senator Cummins has said, on both sides, we need to have honesty. Over the summer, I listened to a very, very emotional address by Paul Quinn's mother on the radio, a mother who was gutted by the loss of her son, but who was vehement in her views that the IRA are still in existence and controlling areas along the border, and who were responsible for the death of her young son, who was brutally beaten to death in South Armagh. And she claimed that people living in the border areas are well aware of the situation, and this is something that is backed up by so many people who live along the border. I know I travelled between Dundalk and Monaghan for 16 years, and where the area in Cullaville that you went through daily, it was well known that it was an IRA stronghold, that it was somewhere that on a daily basis sometimes we couldn't drive through because there were threats, or there were bomb scares, or there were different things happening. So, I mean, you know, this is something that I think honesty needs to be dealt with, and the people who are saying they have no idea of it need to come forward with it. Another person that I spoke with recently, yes, and I just would like to thank
your time as well. Look,
okay. Another person that I recently spoke with was a very brave man, Paddy McGahan, who himself came forward in the last number of months as a victim of abuse by a Republican member in his own home. And he is adamant that the Sinn Féin leader was well aware of the abuse in 2002, but unfortunately the Sinn Féin leader is denying this, just as he denied the any knowledge of the horrific abuse of Maria Cahill, and failed to report his brother for abuse while allowing him to work with young children in Dundalk. Okay.
Thank you.
Could I just
Senator, a moment. No interruptions, please.
And you've had your opportunity.
A bit of order here, please, Senator Moore. Your time is up now, Senator. I'm sorry.
Could I just finish by saying that I too would like to add my voice to the regret on the announcement by Jimmy Hart today of his resignation. He was a great colleague, another man who worked very hard north and south, and another avid soccer
Thank you, Senator Moore.